Hey everyone, it's Andre Luck here to share my video for this week, where I'm going to talk about the third problem that we've identified with B2B sports sales organizations, and that's around lack of accurate data. So when you have better data, you're able to make better and more informed decisions. And I'll talk through how this happens, and then also the solutions to improve this problem, and then some of the benefits. So to recap the first two problems that we through, the first one is just teaching sports salespeople to have better business conversations. As I mentioned before, many salespeople, they've come up very consumer focused and then working on training and laying out a foundation so that those sellers can now have conversations around ROI, impact to the business, and stop talking about selling tickets and then focusing more on selling business outcomes. And then the next step in that process is documenting all those best practices. So last week we talked about building out a B2B playbook and some of the benefits of that and what all goes into a great playbook. So the next step as we work with an organization that's going through a transformation would be now improving that reporting and forecasting. So what that means, it's their CRM reports and some of the sales reports that show how effective, what leads are coming in and which ones are working well, which ones are not working well, the sources of where a lot of sales are coming in, sales reporting, so how salespeople are stacking up as relates to revenue, what of that's coming inbound, what of that's going outbound, what sources and campaigns do they work really well, and then looking at numbers that the executive leadership's looking at, so more holistically, high level conversion rates, revenue, total revenue, and where everything's coming from, and then breaking that down by the different departments. So one of the problems and why this problem happens, or one of the reasons this problem happens, is there's a lot of junior people that are typically in what you'd call revenue operations department. So that could be teams that are helping and supporting on the operations side from sales, operations, marketing, and a lot of times those are entry level roles. And maybe you have someone that's pretty senior at the top, but a lot of people doing the manual work day to day that are in the systems are fairly junior, and there's a lot of turnover on those teams. So you never really build up and scale a team the way you need to. So one opportunity there is to pay them appropriately so they're not looking for jobs. A lot of times the best people will go find jobs outside of sports and tech and SaaS because there's opportunities to make more money and make a bigger impact on the B2B side. So looking for ways to mold and develop that talent within, and then looking to keep them and grow them. And one of those could be through advancement and leadership opportunities, but also just from a compensation standpoint, that could be a good way to keep them as well. So then when you have a more tenured team and more senior staff, they can really work closely and you have synergy across the different departments. And you have people that understand your sales process and understand your market and know what information is going to help best make decisions and best drive the production that you're looking for, and then find those systems. And next week I'll talk about technologies, but also look to implement those technologies so that you have good, strong data and infrastructure and systems and everything like that. The other problem that we see is there's different reporting and forecasts that different departments are looking at. So sales may have a report that they're looking at that shows them this figure, these figures, and these numbers. And then your finance team may be looking at something different as it relates to sales numbers, and then same with your executive team and marketing team. So everyone has differing truths about what's working and what's not working. So really looking to align that on what's the high level business metric that we're looking to achieve, and then building out maybe cuts of that report across the different departments, but everyone's looking at the same number. Everyone's looking at what's the main goal, because just the sales side may be looking specifically at like season ticket sales or ticket sales, or marketing may be looking at other types of revenue and how they're driving revenue from a single game perspective, which those are all important and they all funnel up to the total ticket number. But really looking at what's working and what's not working from a holistic standpoint is one way that you can get everyone on the same page, and then you don't have competing agendas. Because if you're compensating one team or evaluating one team on metrics that tie to them versus what happens in sales, so a lot of times you'll see there's a lack of alignment between sales and marketing, because marketing is gold and incentivized for focusing on different numbers, and they look at those metrics, where sales maybe have a different goal, but they all should tie up to the same goal. And figuring out how you build out your plans and evaluations and compensation and everything like that is important. But as long as they're aligned to the number one same number, everyone's focused on the same thing and you have more alignment there. What also becomes a problem is that this takes a lot of time away from your sales leaders and your sales team from just doing their job. Because, whether it's the leadership team or executive leadership team wants to check in and see where we're at with certain deals, that takes time. Because if you don't have the reporting set up, then you have to either ask that person, and maybe they have it on a spreadsheet, or they have to go into their CRM and find out, all right, let me see where I'm at with this deal. And then there's this chain down to figure out where we're at with the deal, and then chain back up. And then this back and forth where if we just have one report where all the data funnels into, and all of that's coming from your CRM system, your customer relationship management system, then everyone can go in there. And so that's another education piece, is a lot of executives aren't trained on how to tap into that and how to use CRM. Like, that should be something that's not just sales facing and sales focused, so people can keep their notes and make sure that they claim their accounts. Like, that is a tool that, if leveraged appropriately, should be used across the entire business function. Anyone that has anything to do with reporting or is looking at tickets and looking to drive sales numbers and everything like that, they should be in CRM and know how to read the reports that are in there. So that saves the time from having to check in on certain deals and where we're at, and everyone can just go there on their own and see, all right, we're working with this company and it looks like we're at this stage in the process and we expect this much amount of revenue to close in the next 30 days. Like, that's a lot different than what currently happens today, where it's very manual and takes time away from sellers to go sell and then leaders to go lead and run the business. And this also helps just keep executive leadership in the loop, because yes, they should have a good relationship with those sales leaders, managers, directors, but they can take that information and pair that with other data that and insights that they have across the business to understand how the business is performing without having to meet on it and check in, and which again just takes more time out of everyone. So the solution, like we talked about, is having unified data and forecasting. So making sure that at the ground level, your salespeople are inputting the right data into CRM and doing it most effectively. And so you've mapped out what's all the information that we need to collect and what all needs to go in there, and how can that spit out the reports that we want, and we're collecting the right data that we have. Also, clearly defining what it means to be in a certain stage, because a lot of times a sales rep may think a deal's across the finish line or close to it, where there's a lot of other things that need to happen. So one thing that I was really working on in my last role was defining what is a clear step to move forward in the process. So from moving from stage one, where it may be like an initiated stage, to now we're in somewhat of a deal cycle. Like, what needs to happen? Does a meeting need to be held? Does a proposal need to be put together? And you've agreed upon this is, a timeline. You have a clearly defined close date of when you expect it to happen. Those are things that, one, help coach your sales team on having better conversations, but then also let everyone know where certain deals are, or in the deals are at within the cycle. Because if you ask someone, they're like, oh yeah, like we're pretty close to closing, but no, there's no ambiguity there. There's no bias of like where someone thinks it's at. Like, these steps have been met throughout the process, so we are at stage 2, or we're at stage 3, or whatever, we're late stage in the deal because they've done and executed this criteria. Those are all important when you're building out the different stages and the definitions from a prospect to enter to another stage in the process. Another solution to help remediate that is having automated reporting. So we talked about people being able to go in and find their own reports, but if you have it on a regular cadence, they're getting served those reports. So that just saves time from people having to go out and find the data, but sending it to them on a regular cadence when they need it, so that they can make well-informed decisions. And as long as all that's coming from your CRM system, now you're pairing your ticketing data with your sales data and the information that we're getting from customers, from prospects, and everyone has this one singular truth of information that's coming right out of your CRM system. And then based on the different departments, you could have a different view of it, of what's most important to your sales leaders, what's most important to your finance, what's most important to your executive leadership team. So that's the problem. The solution is having a unified, forecasting system that all reports up to one high level metric that everyone's aligned on. and then different cuts of the data for everyone to see. So the benefit that comes from that just allows for better decision making. So if everyone's unified and everyone's aligned on the data that we're collecting and making decisions on, um, we can then take that information and decide what's the best next step for our business. Are we in an opportunity where we're looking to really increase our retention rates? And how can we best do that? So who currently renews high? Who currently renews at a low rate? And what can we do to move the needle on either of those based on the information or the data that we have? And everyone's speaking the same language, because a lot of times you'll get in these meetings with executives and it's their feelings and it's what they think, or recency bias. But if you have clear data that shows this segment of fans or this segment of buyers, they renew at this percentage, and here's the reason that they don't renew. Now everyone's looking at it from the same lens with the same information and the same data to make those decisions. So that leads to more productive meetings and more productive deal meetings, planning meetings. A lot of times you'll want to meet with some of your top executives or top sales executives and see where are we at in the planning process or where are we at in the sales process with certain prospects and clients. And if everyone's looking at the same data on a consistent basis, they're speaking the same language. And again, there's no feeling about here's where we're at or here's what the best next step might be. It also leads to better sales results, because if you have an aligned process and you're getting better decisions and better data to make decisions, now you can best define what your sales process is with a certain type of lead or in a certain time of the season or certain ticket product that it is that you're selling. You can define what success looks like. And here are campaigns that we've tried that didn't work. And then everyone's aligned that, all right, that didn't work. Maybe that's not best for us, but this is. So we put more of our efforts there. You can get more support from marketing to do things there, more resources from your finance team to fund some of these initiatives and campaigns, which align with what's best for your sales team. One thing that's specific to sports is forecasting by certain games. So when you look out and map out for baseball, it's an 81 game season. For basketball, it's 41. For football, it's 10. Game by game, you have projections and you have expectations of all that adding up to meet your year-end budget. If you start to fall behind, you're going to have to make that up in other games. But when you have clearly defined forecasting and reporting, you can look out ahead and see that, all right, this game is reporting or forecasting well, or this game is forecasting behind. And you could start to build out contingency plans if you're behind, instead of these panic moments that come up, a week out, a couple weeks out, like, what are we going to do? At that point, it might be too late to really make an impact. There may be some leverage you could pull last minute, but it's not going to drive significant sales. So if you have an aligned and unified forecasting system and you have quarterly or regular cadence of check-ins on when it makes sense to see where we're at, whether it's 60 days out, 90 days out from a game, and then you could start to plan accordingly about, all right, what do we do when we're behind, or what do we do when we're ahead to really crank it up and get results out of that game because it seems to be pacing well. There's some opportunities, and that's a real business impact when you have good data and great forecasting to look at some of those things. So looking at that, being able to forecast better, being able to build out a scalable process that should and will lead to better revenue results and better revenue opportunities within the sales team. And then long term, you're less reactive, you're more proactive, you feel like you're in the driver's seat, which is a great place to be. And then when problems arise and when things come up, you're not in panic mode. You're like, all right, we've been here before, we have our contingency plan, let's execute it, and then we can change, if things aren't performing the way that we expect them to or we want them to. But it's just great for everyone to be speaking the same language, looking at the same data, looking at the same reports, because a lot of times people have their own kind of cuts of it, and then you're not talking the same language in some of these meetings. So everyone getting on the same page and getting aligned, that's going to lead to more long-term sustainable growth. And I think this pairs up really well with what I'll talk about next week, which is around technology. Because I think the number one tool in your tech stack should be your customer relationship management, your CRM system, which all this data feeds into, and you pull from other sources. You pull that in from your ticketing platform. You pull that in from some of maybe your marketing platforms and see what the engagement is with some of your customers and email open rates and things like that. So as you have a sound process now, you can really add fuel to the fire with a strong tech stack and adding technology to really be more efficient and improve your results. So we'll talk about that next week, but we'd love to hear your feedback here on this week's topic, which is more around accurate data and better forecasting. But always, as always, appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you again next week.